A very good evening to you once again from the sports desk. Let's take it to the roads. Randburg will see the RAC Tough One take place next Sunday. The annual race regularly attracts thousands of participants. Now, for more on the event, we are joined in studio by race director Dick Welch and Rand Athletic Club's chairperson Mike Rolfe. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming through to speak to us. I want to start with you, Dick. A well-known name in the running circles. You've been doing this for quite a while. But why is the race called Tough One? You've been chairman for like over 40 years?
You said you've run it twice, and you haven't realized that it's a tough one.
Well,
That's
I have run it twice. But so was that the whole plan to make it tough?
The initial one that was run, the run is all finished. And they said, wow, but that was tough. Okay. And it stuck. Yeah. And we stuck with the name. Yeah.
But also the other thing, Dick, it's 32 kilometers. It's such a weird distance because runners, it's either you do a 10 or a 5K, which is a fun run. You do a half marathon, which is a 21. You do a 42, which is a full marathon. Or if you want to test your limits, you go for an ultra 56, 90, and so on and so forth. Why 32?
You really hit the nail on the head. 32 is not a distance.
So what is it?
But in the old money, it used to be 20 miles. And if you could run 20 miles in 2 hours, you were going some. And the first tough one was a 32K 20 miler.
I see. It makes sense now.
And 20 miles is actually a very interesting distance from a physiological point of view. And when we started off, we didn't know that or didn't understand it. Because if you've been running for about 2 hours and you suddenly start getting sore and tired and everybody says, oh, I've hit the wall. That's where you have a metabolic change. Your system changes. It swaps over from using the glycogen fuel in your system, which is easily used, easily burnt, to metabolizing fats. And they take a bit longer and more difficult to metabolize, and you build up the lactic acid and you get sore. That's where you hit the wall. So the 32 kilometer is, from a physiological point of view, a very interesting one. Now, the more you train, the further you can push it out. So you can push that change.
My run this morning was an hour and 56 minutes. So
either
I didn't
time or distance.
I didn't do quite. Mike, let me bring you into the conversation. I mean, you have taken over as a chairperson. Just tell me a little bit about the history and what it means to be part of such an iconic race, that is the Tough One.
Well, I mean, it's well known now that this is possibly the first 50th celebration of a 32 or 20 miler, as Dick alluded. Yeah. Many guys have made a mistake, by the way, because some of the races still do run 32.2 kilometers, which is a 20 miler, and a 16.1 is a 10 miler. Yes. So people make a mistake thinking that if it's a 20 miler and they stick to that distance, they forget about the last 200 meters, especially if they're close. We actually offer a special medal called an icon for breaking 3 hours at this race to just support the Tough One image. And traditionally, I've run many of those. I've run many of them. It's normally in late November, which means hot.
Extremely hot.
People get a big wake-up call when they eventually get near Randburg because it gets really hot then. And so that makes it even worse. So the equivalent, they say, it's as tough as running a normal marathon. A marathon under good conditions, you can get just as much exercise running our Tough One. So we are expecting hopefully a record field. We traditionally get about 3,000 runners. We're hoping to have 4,000 runners on Sunday. We've kept entries open, so we still allow people to enter at the normal price on Saturday. But if you're late and you come in on Sunday, well, you're going to have to pay a little bit extra. So the stragglers will end up paying a little bit more.
I feel like that's very personal, directed at me. But Dick, I want please take us back to the gradual, when we started. I think it was about 10 years when you joined and became the chairman, having been there for about 43 or so years. What has the response been like and the growth of the race to what it is now?
The race has gradually grown, but we've also, there were two 20 milers within 2 weeks of each other. So the running fraternity said it doesn't make sense to have two runs so close together. The Spring Strider was one that long before ours. So we moved to November. Now, November, as you know, is the end of the season, and it's sort of the wrong time to really have a 32K. So we've had to introduce all sorts of gimmicks, one of which is permanent numbers after 10 times. 10
times, yeah.
So you get a embroidered permanent number.
I still have a long way to go.
After 20, you get a clock. Okay. And it's a rather nice clock, and it looks like it's a family heirloom, and a lot of guys are going for them. And this year we've got something like 20 runners going for their 20th clocks.
Wow.
Which is quite something. We've also got, I think Freddie worked out, 2,400 people who've run more than 10 tough ones. So the guys keep on coming back. We have a repeat offenders, if you want to call them that way, but we have repeat customers. They seem to enjoy it. The hills definitely make it tough, but we go through nice surrounding suburbs, which are really attractive, and the race itself is normally very pleasant from that way.
Talk to me then, Mike, about the route for someone who has not run it and is watching and says, well, it's only 32, it's not 42, it's not 56 or 90. Talk to me about the route. What makes it tough?
We runners all have their thoughts and their legendary ideas about runs. This is the only run in the world that only goes up. There's no downhill. So you start and you go up. No, look, you start off in Bordeaux at our club, and then you trundle up Jan Smuts Avenue, and you go left all the way up to Moabelo. Then it's flat. You turn right, and there's this gradual incline along Moabelo all the way to Witkoppen Road. And then there's the celebrated 12-kilometer mark, which is a lot of people say this is the only part you can run fast. It's a massive downhill to Pritchard Street, and everybody thinks it's good fun because you get there at the 15-kilometer mark at Pritchard, and you turn right, and that's the big wake-up call. It used to go straight on. We used to go straight on into Main Road, even worse. We used to turn right into Main, and that Main was 5.5 kilometers slog all the way to the top of the hill. Now we wend our way through the leafy suburbs of Bryanston, Johannesburg North, and eventually back into Randburg. So it's a lot more pleasant because there is shade. In our day, Dick and I, when we ran that race, there was no shade. And it was only up, as I said. So eventually when you crashed down Main Road and you thought you'd made it when you got near to the hospital, which you required on the left, very tough section just before you finished down Garden Road, Heartbreak Hill, and then left into the club. So generally speaking, I think it's the heat. The course itself is undulating, but there is a tremendous amount of uphill because the downs are quite steep, and then you've got these long, gradual climbs that really do take a lot out of you.
I don't know, the more you talk about it, the more reasons I'm finding for not running next Sunday. I thought by that time I would be convinced to say, let me give it a shot one more time.
You see, Kwena, the trick here is that we introduced this Icon medal, which is a famous medal, and we got an incredible turnout for people to break 3 hours. And most guys will say, oh, well, 3 hours is a very easy run for a 32. It's sharp, but it's not that hard. In our case, less than 20% of the field can break that 3 hours. And the first year we introduced the Icon medal, we had a record entry. And in actual fact, we ran out of Icon medals because we only anticipated 700, 800 finishes, I think. And we had over 1,000 that did finish. But that shows if you put your mind to it, you can do something. But I, for one, I know how hard I've run. In actual fact, the one year I ran, I was the last Icon. I fell across the line with Dick laughing at me because I had to dive to beat the 3-hour magic mark. I got in 2:59.59, and I'm really happy about that.
Well, I don't know if I would ever run that.
Come on, it's a challenge.
Well, look, I will run.
This is what a lot of guys
I will run the tough one, but I don't think I'll do it in 3 I don't think I'll be able to do it in 3 hours. Just as we wrap up the conversation, Dick, very briefly, why then should runners be part of especially the 50th edition?
I think just the mere fact of being part of a little bit of history that they can take part in. Not all of the bits of history are available to every one of us. And I think it's something that to remember years later and say, you know, I was at your 50th run and such like. So that little bit of history, I think, for many people, particularly if it's a challenge, I think is something worth cherishing.
Fantastic. Mike, just a quick word also about the entries. You said the entries are still available. The race is on the 24th?
24th of November at 6 o'clock. It starts at Old Parktonians in Bordeaux. We have peak timing of the online entry site. You can get your online entries at peak timing. And we do have late entries for sale at the club on the Saturday. Well, you can collect your ribbons on Saturday and late entries on Sunday.
Fantastic. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming through to speak to us, and best of luck with the 50th edition, and hopefully many more to come.
Thank you very much.
And Dick Welch talking to us about the RAC Tough One that is taking place on the 24th of November. That is next weekend.